Good afternoon. My name is Latoya Foston, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer for She Built This City. Welcome to the second installment of our March Pledge Series, 50/50 by 2030, our Pledge for Equity. We're excited to have James Walker, CEO of Informative Technologies, with us today. We're going to be digging into our our third pillar, investing in the future, and what that looks like for us. That's both investing in youth, investing in workforce development pathways, and investing in technology. And today's conversation really speaks a little bit on each of those areas and what we can do as an organization to hasten the readiness of the workforce for the trades. And so we're really excited for the conversation today. James, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the format of today's conversation will be that a conversation between James and I, him being the expert, me being the novice, and talking through some of the systems and functions of data science and how they can apply to workforce development and particularly trades training to hasten the readiness of the workforce. So I'm going to introduce James a little bit more thoroughly through reading his bio, and then we're going to dig into our conversation. James Walker is CEO of Informative Technologies, Inc., a social enterprise that has researched and developed scalable, market-driven solutions to the problems of the digital divide and electronic waste since 2014. Since 2015, he has been the only technology company in Charlotte, North Carolina to engage thousands of paid internship hours annually in partnership with Title I public schools, the community college system, and Charlotte Works, the county's labor department. Recently, Informative partnered with the Charlotte Library on a CARES Act project, resulting in national recognition of the library as top innovator in the field of digital citizenship. James's approach led to 11 jobs for at-risk youth and prison re-entry program participants who worked to build and support 2,055 households worth of computers in 4 months. Wow, that is an impressive background, scope, and impact, and part of why we wanted to both partner with you as well as learn from you as the work that you're doing in the community. So let's dig in, James.
Absolutely.
Tell us a little bit more about Informative Technologies, your work in data science and workforce development. We'll start there and then we'll go a little deeper into our specific interests.
Sure. So I started Informative Technologies in 2014, so about 7 years ago. And all of that time, we've been a university business partner for UNC Charlotte. UNC Charlotte has an interesting niche in the network of state universities because they want to be they want to be the opposite of an ivory tower, put it like that. They have a commitment to students being able to apply their skills for social good right out of college, if possible. And that's one of the ways that we, as a social venture, as you said, that's focused on scalable and sustainable solutions to the digital divide. That's kind of our core piece, but other issues affecting upward mobility for at-risk communities. We really prided ourselves on the fact that we've had a 7-year partnership with the university, getting students involved, being able to guest lecture before classes, being able to work with faculty on grant projects, and really have academic oversight, so to speak, if necessary, to really make sure we're making the impacts that we claim to make. We don't really just have sales pitches. We really want to make sure we're moving the needle, and we are evaluated accordingly. When it comes to workforce development, starting, as I said, in about 2015, a year after we started, I'm a bootstrapped social venture. So it's a business, but it has the same kind of goals as a nonprofit, but it's meant to be a business. It's meant to fund itself. I don't have the funds to have full-time staff. And I found out that there is a program, a number of programs through the workforce department here in the county, as there are in every county, little does everyone know, for people who are at risk of being chronically unemployed. And that those programs are funded federally through funds that have been around since the 1980s. It's the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, WIOA, WIOA. These are students that are trying to turn a corner in maybe a difficult childhood, or students who maybe dropped out of high school, maybe they're in remedial classes at the community college at CPCC, but they're trying, and all they need is a work site, and they'll be paid through the state if they could just get a work site that would sign off on hours. And that scratched the itch of my need for a source of labor that I could afford, which would make me interested. But then once I got involved, I realized, wow, why are people not snapping up the opportunity to just sign the dotted line and just let people work, and they're paid by someone else? And I realized this is going to pivot the way that we do our work. And so ever since, we have incorporated students at all levels of their familiarity with technology in our projects with the local government or with regional nonprofits, setting up websites, building apps, building thousands of computers, providing tech support. We found ways that we could bring them in and actually have them do meaningful work that will not only get them paid, but will also allow us to have a lower cost to our customers, and they have a stronger resume coming out. So this kind of circular, reciprocated relationship develops. And I think, I guess, to hand it back over to you, that's where I also became really interested in what you shared with me about the work of She Built the City. I'm not in the trades, I'm in the traditional trades, the construction trades, plumbing, electrical work. But I think a lot of those skills and a lot of the ways that I was able to upskill my own staff, which has, by calculation, high turnover, internships are only a semester or two. How do we get them so that they're helping me on a project within a few weeks? And in turn, how can I help you with your mission of introducing a more diverse workforce in your industries of choice? So that's where it's taken me over the last 7 years.
No, that's awesome. And when our paths crossed about 4 years ago now, 3 to 4 years ago, that intrigued me. You know, your method of engagement using technology, you know, focusing on e-waste and eliminating that, it was very intriguing. And looking at what we can do now together is even the more, because I believe it's applying a way of processing that is already prevalent in our society. It just hasn't been applied to the trade. So let's dig into that a little bit more.
Sure.
So some fun background.
Yes.
James and I were at a play date. So our sons went to the same school, and we were discussing just, you know, what's going on, you know, in our environments, different work projects. And through conversation, you know, the light bulb began to shine, at first very dimly, but over the course of weeks, extremely brightly, as to how we could work together. And the gap we were trying to fill is that, okay, looking at the trades in general, not just women, there is a massive gap and need. And so there's lots of jobs available, but not a lot of people to fill those jobs. So that's, you know, situation one. Situation two is there are lots of people who need employment, you know, especially in Charlotte, especially as we talk about upward mobility. And so what has been, you know, the gap there, and how can we fill it? And then James shared, I don't know if it was that conversation or one after, the concept of Uber and what Uber has done to the gig economy in making jobs more available without using data and science to make jobs more available without removing the job. Because I think that is the fight, you know, that we have in workforce development spaces, is like, yes, let's automate, but there's those people who will never use self-checkout because they don't want to eliminate the person, you know, in that job. And so that's an area that I wanted to explore. And so James, tell us a little bit more about the Uber concept, and then let's talk about potentially what that looks like for the trade space.
Sure. There is there's a bit of background to that analogy. I position what I do, and I guess it's 7 years on. It's, I guess, am I still a startup? I guess so. It feels like it, but it's the mindset of a startup like an Uber or Facebook, something that's in the Silicon Valley, is different than than my approach. And I think it is because I was forced to work with people who are on the margins, and who, like, if I don't give them a chance, like, you will be a minimum wage worker. Like, that's what their own counselors are warning them. Like, you're a C student, if a C student, at a overcrowded school, you better just take this opportunity and run with it to kind of learn something new that's more challenging, right? That, like, the combination of, here's what most people think of as a startup, like Uber. They start with millions of dollars. Like, they never go a hungry day in their life, and then they become billion-dollar companies, and they use a lot of data and automation and machine learning and everything else. And then on my end, I have this work where you have exactly what you mentioned: people who want to work. They are trying, but nobody's really interested in giving them even a shot as an intern. And I've innovated ways to upskill them quickly. Like, within 2 weeks, you can do something for me. Like, you can build a computer, you can answer some emails or something, right? And what I started to, over the years, synthesize in my mind is, Uber is successful because it is doing something like what my part of my social mission is. It's uplifting people. But as we all know, they're moving to the next level of, hey, let's work with Elon Musk or whatever, and let's have just driverless cars. Who needs the driver? We can just have Uber, which already tells you when to turn and where to go, drive the car itself. And they don't have, and they lose the value of workforce development, right? My introduction to you was, if we have a workforce here that has a certain learning curve before they can really be independent and able to kind of grow year by year on their own and fend for themselves in a in a industry that has a lot of job openings and a lot of opportunities for growth. Well, that's similar to what I saw in technology, right? I use a lot of I use a lot of automation and data science, which is essentially, whenever you hear AI, machine learning, all of these things where computers are kind of thinking, stuff like Siri, Alexa, where this computer is kind of like answering questions for you. I use that technology to help make sure my staff know how to give a correct answer, even though they have very little training, like days or weeks of training, right? But somebody wants to talk to a human. They don't want to talk to a chatbot, right? Well, now, if that's an example of automation that helps a person enter and feel comfortable into a new working environment. If we are to look at what Uber did and we say, here's the good thing that they did, I would say it's this. Think about how many people, maybe yourself, maybe your family, certainly somebody in your friends network, supplements income on Uber, something that did not exist hardly 10 years ago, or certainly 15 years ago, right? And would have said, well, really, by 15 years ago, it would have sounded ridiculous. You're going to text a stranger to give you a ride in their personal car and trust that they'll drop you off. And you, as a driver, will pick up some guy who texted you and trust that he's going to pay you. I'm sure, I mean, that took a lot of courage to really think down a model where that actually thrives, and it replaces taxi cabs as their default way of getting around if you don't have a car in a city that doesn't have a metro. Here's the thing that I take from that, and I don't want to meander too far off. If you have technology that took an average person who's just really interested in supplementing income and allows them to compete with a taxi cab driver who's been in that city all of his life and who spent 10, 15, 20 years on the road knowing every nook and cranny, every back alley, every shortcut, to get around that city. And now those people with just a smartphone on their dashboard are now equal with each other, such that you have taxi cab unions, and rightfully so, say, hey, this is disruptive to our industry. Well, Uber approached it as, I want to disrupt an industry, right? And therefore they're going to disrupt their own drivers ultimately, that they're telling you. They'll say, well, why pay the driver? We could just have cars, and then buy the car once, and then the car just drives around town. That's what they're spending their time and their billions of dollars trying to innovate. I think they lost the vision of exactly how genius that model really is. So if we bring it all home here, if we have a model here at Informative, here local to where She Built the City is headquartered in Charlotte, that is helping us do thousands of hours a year of internships, where we have a constantly changing workforce. We have the people who have been picked over by businesses, picked over by college recruiters. Those are our workforce, and we're able to achieve what we're able to achieve. It's not perfect, it's challenging at times, but we're able to find ways to stick with them and fend for them using technology to back them up. Then I think Uber has then said, the big picture is, you in a decade could have tens, hundreds of thousands of people who are competitive in an environment that they would never have seen themselves as competitive in, if you could apply it to some other industry. But instead of saying, I want to disrupt it, I want to uplift people into it. And I hope that made some sense. And if it doesn't, please, let me know.
No, absolutely. And again, to see how our conversation has progressed over the last couple of months, to me, it's like, yes, that's exactly what we need. I want to acknowledge a couple of things. First, to me, that was the innovation of this, of taking this system and an industry like the trades that have a way of training of apprenticeships that requires an individual. It's usually a 2-to-1. So 2 apprentices can apprentice under 1 person. And if we look at the gap in how many people we would need to train to fill the workforce gap, there's not enough trainers, like logistically. There's not enough people who people could apprentice under to even fill the gap. So we have to look at this in a different way. And so what I want to do first is I want to address 2 things. I want to address, there's some tension here in this space, just like you mentioned with the taxi cabs. I would imagine, and I'm not imagining, these have been active conversations I've had with partners, that this may not be something that traditional trades want to embrace, because it takes, in theory, in their minds, it takes something away from the nobleness of a 4-year training process and what that career looks like, because it's a career taxi cab driver is very different than an Uber driver. The gig economy has changed how we interact. And so I want to take a minute. I don't have an answer there, James. I don't expect you to have that answer, but I'd be remiss and I wouldn't be respectful to some of our partners if I didn't discuss that. Like, is this, devaluing the industry? What does this represent? I have my own opinions. I'm Teach for America, if that gives you any
so that's a similar analog
where I came in on the spectrum. Teach for America did the same thing to traditional education systems and universities and ways of teaching. Like, how dare an institution think in 6 weeks you can prepare someone to teach with what it took us 4 years to do, and how they're going to be effective. So I am a product of a similar program. And so I wanted to just allow space. And Shonda, please feel free to jump in here. We're having an active conversation. I wanted to just make space for that. It's a tension that I would be ignorant to not name, that there's something there. There's something there.
So using the technology industry as an analog, as a comparison, because it too does not require you to have a degree. I mean, goodness, how many dropout stories have you heard from Silicon Valley where they're billionaires today? Now, obviously, Results not typical. You could also say you could drop out of
Mhm.
school and be good at something, and you're the one famous person or two famous people, and there's hundreds of thousands of people who struggle to get out of school and are loaded with college debt, and they obviously don't become billionaires. But if you do look at that model, there is a culture in this industry that says, look, if the founder or the boss, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, uh, Mark Zuckerberg, if they could be forgiven for not finishing a degree, then I could be forgiven for being a hobbyist who learned to tinker and hobby with computers since I was a kid. And so the culture is a little more accepting of, hey, however you got the knowledge, can you get it done? Can you make an app? And then you need to do more work around understanding business. You need to understand structure, how to work with a team, those sorts of things. But you're in, you can program, you're in, you know how to fix things, you're in, you can, uh, fix, set up a website for me. I don't really care what your paper is on the wall, right? I don't know how that is in the construction trades, but I would say if you're willing to have someone first, one rebuttal to that might be if you're willing to have someone who tinkered around with following maybe his or her father around who was a plumber or helped with the, helped hand tools or something, um, to an electrician, and you just saw it just organically, and then you see that person as kind of a born talent. They didn't have maybe the formal training. You just jump and they go right into work. They don't have a 4-year process to get into it. They just seem to be a natural talent. Well, I don't know if that's part of the culture, but if that's acceptable, I think all we're saying is let there be a new form of the culture, which is when it comes to common fixes, and that's the way we do things is to take common things. How do you replace the battery on a laptop? How do you change a crashed hard drive out and replace it with a new hard drive? Things that are low risk but high value, because that customer is going to be happy, and it takes 5 to 20 minutes to do. If I can get a screen that tells me step 1, step 2, step 3 for how to how to fix a leaky faucet or a running toilet, and it's exactly the best cases for how to handle that for that model of toilet, for that age of house, or whatever it is that you have to use as uh, ways to filter out which guide to follow. If I can get the job done right, and you don't have to hold my hand on those things. You can hold my hand on a, a, a pipe burst and it's Houston, Texas, and it's freezing, and nobody's used to freezing weather. Okay, straight up years of experience are necessary, right? Let's jump in together. I can be of use, right? What can I do? Versus you're helping me with turning off the leaky faucet by unscrewing it a certain way and then replacing a washer. I think that argument now becomes, okay, well, if we had tolerance for the person, typically a guy who came up under typically a dad and just saw it, and then you have the chops the first year you're in there, you're a greenhorn, but you know how to get things done. Can we have that same idea of acceptance again for a lady who's joining your team who has tools to get her to be, again, like Uber does, able to do what a first year, second year person can do up front with some help, but minimal help. And then the help that you do get and the patience that you have to extend is focused on the nuanced projects that are higher paying. And that's exactly what you want. You want to be able to specialize and be able to be competitive in your field with. So I think that would be the approach there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was going to pause there real quick and just see, Shonda, if you had any questions. So since this is your first time hearing this conversation, like, how does it land with you? What do you see? And Shonda's role with She Built This City, she is our new workforce development director. And so she is helping us build our pilot programs within the trades for women, as well as how we're going to utilize specific supports for women. And so not only will she support She Built This City's platforms, but we're going to be ambassadors, so to speak, to other workforce development programs that have women in them, and come alongside those women to see them be even more successful, so that the women are have access to the same kind of support systems that we would give within our own program. And so we're about 2 to 3 weeks in now, Shonda,
Yeah.
in the role.
I'm trying to mull it around in my head as far as because my son is in data analyst. He's a data analyst with Wells Fargo. That's his his undergrad is in quantitative economics. His master's is in BI and analytics. And he also teaches as an adjunct in BI. So I'm trying to wrap my head around that whole concept with looking at skill trades and how the two can lend each other to, to each other.
Where's the data piece come in?
Yeah, I'm trying. And I know that from learning from him, there's not very many of us in business intelligence and analytics.
Oh, no.
You do have, the Zuckerbergs and whatnot, but who didn't go the traditional route of a university education, but they also have a certain type of skin type.
Yes.
And they also come from backgrounds where their family had affluence. So if you're looking at us coming into that skilled area, we have to come with a whole lot more than just our ability.
Yes. And as I actually, my office window faces the School of Data Science, which is one of the distinct offerings here at UNC Charlotte, and they're really committed to data science for the social good. So I actually have a number of undergraduate and graduate students, international as well as American citizens, almost everyone of color, mixture of men and women, who intern with us to help us with more projects like yours, for example, working with She Built the City. That is an example one of how do we get that talent pool to be able to distinguish itself in the exact same way as I just gave as a hypothetical with let's say a guy who's again a born talent with pipe fitting and trades and a mechanic, it's a similar thing. Your family, your father was an engineer, you drop out of Stanford or whatever if you want to, we're going to give you a shot. We'll give you money too. That's a nice one too. We'll give you $1 million, try it out. If you fail, you fail. Can't win them all. Not so, as you said, your son has multiple tiers of degrees to kind of get into this field. And I know what you're saying. So in this case, this is an example of where I would say this is where diversity, like thought diversity, the way you approach a problem can be of value, and it translates both to, I think, minorities in STEM as it does to women in trades where they're underrepresented. And that is, one is I can just be exactly like every single other person focusing on Bitcoin and landing on Mars and driverless cars and that kind of computer science. That's just completely like, I love Star Wars and I want to make Star Wars happen when I grow up. Like that version of computer science we hear all the time, versus people are offline. I need to create jobs and I need to help people create cheap computers and support them affordably. Like that's my drive. And that's how I created a business around it. Here's how data science analytics, just to kind of give some background on how that intersects with this. The two areas that I would draw on is decision support systems, which is technically what you hear if you study, and you can major in it here at UNC Charlotte, health informatics and data analytics. Health informatics is the same thing. It's just you're a health data scientist, except, and we see a lot of that. All these COVID numbers you see on the corner of CNN, all of that. Like, okay, people are now able to see, wow, data can drive decision making, and if you get it wrong, you can hurt people with data. help people with data. Okay, it's through breathing, says the data. Mask, okay, maybe you should double mask if you're in a certain situation. All of that is data that's informing a better way for a decision to be made. That's called a decision support system. Outside, typically only health informatics talks about that. But if you were to say, wait a minute, this decision, DSS, that's the term, you can check it out, Wikipedia, YouTube. Decision support systems are so proven at upskilling people and keeping those who are currently skilled from being stagnant in their knowledge. That is the reason that your doctor has some screen in front of you, between you and the doctor, typing or having an assistant type or tap information about the visit as you talk. As you give symptoms are entered into a DSS. That's what they're entering into. So yes, your medical record, like what happened and what prescription you have, but it's going to say things like, we don't have enough information from this 15-minute visit. Do a blood work, ask if you have COVID shot, do you need a flu shot? These are prompts. So here's a doctor, like what we think of as the highest level terminal degree, taking orders based on all of the scientific papers that are out there, kind of summarized into decision supports. Okay, it's COVID out there, you have diabetes, you're African American. Okay, yeah, let's prioritize that person into category A of the vaccine, and then just put that on the calendar. The system is doing a lot of the work where the doctor just cannot have it all in their head, exactly how to cure every person of every kind of disease. If it's good enough for them to take a body of knowledge for a very complicated field and to get help instantly, so they can have in a 15-minute discussion enough information to get you going, right? Why can't we do that with plumbing? Why can't we do that with any of these other skill trades that are obviously not as high stakes in terms of, you give someone the wrong pill, they could have a severe reaction or something. You're talking about, again, can I get started with something? Can I wire something? Can I, again, install drywall or something like that? Something that's common, that has a little room for error. And can we design a system for the first time that's really geared towards that? Because doctors and nurses do it, and they do it so much, we assume that they're going to have. So it's like if they just came there and just talked to you and they had nothing in their hand, it's almost like, are you going to write that down or whatever? We almost assume that they're going to have that. And that is the intersection that I see between data science, which when applied is for good and social good. It can create things like decision support systems, or more gimmicky things like Siri or Alexa. It knows everything on Wikipedia. It's just demonstrating the same concept. If we have a body of best practices that we can get from partners, what do you do for that first 6 months of training? Let's gather that from Lowe's and other reputable organizations, and now analyze and see where is the overlap mostly going to be found, and where's the skill set, either beginner or intermediate. And now let a system help a person say, here's the situation I'm in, here's the kind of house or kind of fixture or whatever it is. How do I do this thing? How do I solve this problem? That doesn't exist as far as I know, but I think that is where the innovation comes, and that's what excites.
So it's like taking raw data and building out a dashboard.
Yes,
absolutely. Absolutely. And so where we were thinking, so I want to address a little bit more of the mechanics, because you started to go there, James, with sort of like how, and then where that would be used for us and the industry as a whole. So I remember trying to pitch this to someone right after James and I had talked, and I hadn't fully processed how it would work. And she was like, so what you're telling me is you're going to take people off the street, give them a bunch of Googled answers, and send them to fix the sink at my house? I was like, no, that's not what we're saying. That's not where we're going either. we are still talking about doing, training
Mhm.
and giving them the book and hands-on experiences they would need through a typical pre-apprenticeship platform. But there's a difference between going through your first day, going through your training and your first day on the job when you get that first call of leaky toilet. Leaky toilet could be 5 different things. Which one is it? If there was a system that had all of that information together, and again, first days, and then we can talk about the imposter syndrome when you first go on a job site.
Please, let's do that. Yeah.
You want to do like the handy.com app, you want to support, your own business, anxiety of like, what is the right decision, and how the data of the most commonly used items, this is what it is most commonly, and to James's point, that is what doctors do. Sorry, my dog is drinking in the background. We would be able to then help with that decision and hasten readiness for someone who's been through training, someone who knows how to use all the tools, but just now are in the field and have to make a decision. What does that mean? So can you talk about that a little bit more, the mechanics of what kind of things will we be putting together to enable readiness?
You got it. So can I share my screen? I can show you an example of some of the guides that we create. So IFixIt is the model that I'll be using with your body of knowledge. There are teams in IFixIt. IFixIt was created as kind of like a Wikipedia for repair guides, because people, particularly with Apple devices, you don't get any guides on how to fix your own cracked screen. You just pay the people $100 and something at the Apple store, and they'll do it for you, which is, of course, not the cost of a piece of plastic, right? The steps and the tools of how to pop something out and then replace it is what IFixIt started out with, but then it became open to anyone around the world. And as you notice, here we are, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10th in the whole world for the number of things that we've contributed. It's and it's just students from Charlotte area schools and colleges working to make it easy for anyone to revive PCs, right? Of all of these different groups, you have Samsung in there, you have people from the European Union, you have all sorts of groups here. Our approach, which was take folks that are at the beginning stages of an internship or an apprenticeship and have them create documentation that's machine readable, like you can search it. Ended up with, we started in 2018 with this project. Now we have 1,800 plus guides, all sorts of stuff, how to fix iMacs and all sorts of other kinds of things, like how to replace a battery on a iBook. Here's the screw, here's the steps, use a coin to rotate this 90 degrees, pull that out, that's how you do it, right? Take that as an example when you're talking about the mechanics of anything dealing with, you can switch it back off if you want. Anything having to do with your industry, your trade, right? If I said, how do you replace off the top of your head some sort of fixture, a faucet? How do you take a faucet off? It doesn't look obvious unless you're used to being around a faucet. I'm just using plumbing as an example. Okay, if I have guides, one, provided from people's training manuals, but what we would do at Informative is digitize them like we did here, with where the steps are broken out very clearly. We take out all of the redundant material from how Lowe's says to do it, how a plumbing operation in Raleigh says to do it. There's going to be certain similarities, right? And sometimes the differences do matter. But we say, you see this thing here, circle it, highlight it, and we help prepare that material to be machine readable. It's not just a Word doc, it's something that a code can call up and search through, right? And we say, here's 3 steps. It's going to take probably about 5 to 10 minutes. Here's what to do. Imagine then adding logic to that so that you can have clarifying questions, right? So that's where it becomes a decision support. You sometimes see this when you call a bank. They have the bank fraud alert or something. A teller could do that, but really, it's just like, did you spend money at this on this date? What about this on that date? Yes on this one, no on that one. That looks kind of suspicious. Let me ask some more questions. It's going through the process of narrowing down what should be done based on kind of a flow chart that a bank programmer gave it. Well, the same thing could happen here. There's the, yeah, you could say, here's the thick book of how to be plumber 101, plumbing for dummies, memorize all 300 pages, and you'll remember all of the steps to do to diagnose the situation. Or you memorize the right tools, how to use the tools properly. You have hands-on labs on how to use the tools. So if I say use a monkey wrench, you know what that means or whatever, you know. But if I know what the tools are, I know generally how water pressure works, using plumbing as an analogy, things like that, and I can use my human ability to use common sense and problem solving, but you tell me all of the steps in between for a particular situation, I think that's basically the first year of an apprenticeship. The first or second year, 2,000 hours of you sitting around doing those things until it's in your mind, versus in a second or two, I can see those steps, but I can use my training to apply a better judgment in that situation. That to me is has been innovative in the way that we teach technology. Because, for example, if you go to community college right now, it's 2 semesters of studying to learn how to repair computers. You all who are looking at the screen could just see, okay, pick something. What is it? Apple iBook, replace the battery. Okay, 2 pictures. I got it. I don't need to read the book. I don't need 2 semesters of time. As long as I know what I'm looking at, what the parts of the computer are, what the tools are to open up a computer, I can now just start studying the guides. And when we get into troubleshooting a real issue, Zoom isn't working today, okay, that's where I'll spend my time learning on a higher level.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And I want to again acknowledge there could be tension there. The fact that, you know, I could hear some of our partners, you know, sure, in back saying, you know, there's no way, you know, with electrician, you know, that could be done, or iron worker that could be done. And I just want to know that we respect the process and we respect the industry, and we are looking at ways to heighten the pipeline, or widen, excuse me, the pipeline, yes, of people who are even interested and ready, because this gap is widening even the more. COVID has hit a number on our economy, especially women. Yes. So we have to, as she built this city, we're taking the stance that we have to rethink the traditional ways of doing things, the traditional ways of training and engaging interest. We have to think about them differently if we're going to make the impact that we are going to make by 2030. So 50-50 by 2030 is our goal. We know that the traditional ways of doing things are not going to get us there. We have to take untraditional approaches, non-traditional approaches to get there. And so I just want to bring that back into the context. This is not just a, let's see, this is a fun thing for us to try. You know, we have a specific goal, yes, of increasing the number of women in the trades, and then helping the families that have been hurt significantly by this pandemic and what it's done to the family income. We need to make specific impact around that, and we have to use different ways of engaging to make that happen. So I just wanted to,
I think one of your things, and I like it's not all rosy. Technology is not the answer just because it's technology. I'm not that kind of innovator. I'm looking at, because again, I work really a lot with the humanities and the social sciences side of people who are in the university as well, people who are community leaders, nonprofit leaders like yourselves. If I'm trying to solve a problem and not sell a product or sell a service or a solution, because this doesn't exist, it would be something that's customized based on what works. My approach would be quite academic. It's library science, actually. In other words, the library works. It might have 100,000. It might be 100,000 books in a main library, right? You don't just read every single thing for years until you're a librarian in order to find the book, What does the librarian do? One, generally you learn the way to navigate it by saying, okay, what is it I want to learn? I want to learn about plumbing. Okay, well, let's see here. That's going to be in industry, and then industry is going to go into engineering, and engineering is going to go into construction, and then different aspects of construction, right? And that's all high level things that allow you to go right to the general source of knowledge, right? If we organize our bodies of knowledge, if you, in other words, are able to solicit and say, be, that's cynical, but I can understand having some healthy skepticism, but I bet you also have a similar unsaid thing, because it's not politically correct, where the big tough guy doesn't want to like help the little lady out who doesn't know how to, her way around her first few months of a job. And he sees it as a waste of his time when he could be doing something, related to what he got up in the morning to do. Right. So if we said there is a middle ground there, people need to get upskilled, and they're going to be, I'm sure, toxic, maybe even hostile, impatient people who don't want to spend weeks of time trying to answer the entry-level stage questions of how to navigate a whole work site, which is, overwhelming, I'm sure, right? Then can we come up with one, can you submit us the training materials you use? Take out whatever is a trade secret, but I mean, we're talking about how to install light fixtures and stuff. We're not talking about regulating voltage and things. Yeah, you need to have licensure to do that. But being able to set things up and have it in place and be able to be inspected by someone senior, that could be broken down into what's called an ontology, which is what we think of as like the Dewey Decimal System. Okay, there's fixtures. What kind of fixtures? Well, what are the most common fixtures? A light switch and a light bulb socket, if it's electrical work. Or a bathroom. What do most bathrooms have? One sink or two sinks. And then how do the pipes work if it's one sink, and how do the pipes work if it's two? Like you're going to find that there's a whole lot of things that you assume that are really common. 80% of the things might be just 20% of the training. Can we just agree on that we can take that off of your training staff to answer every single question about that? And we want to work with you. And what is that threshold? So I agree, 50%, that's a little too much. That 20%, that really covers 80% of most of the jobs, unclogging something and then just making sure it's, just do a check to just make sure everything else is secure underneath the behind the scenes. Okay, yeah, you know what? I'd actually rather you take that job and learn how to become more and more confident, because there's going to be the pipe that froze over, and that's going to take all of my time and attention. And both people are being able to continue to further their careers. But when there's a question, I think, and it maybe because you haven't mentioned it as much, we could talk about that imposter syndrome. I know people with technology, I assume you don't know anything. You don't know what bytes and bits are. You don't know what megabyte versus gigabyte is. Students might be on the phone, but don't buy the hype about people being digital natives. They have no idea about HTML. Everything to them is jargon. Some of them don't know what a startup is. How is that different than just a small business, like a flower shop? Like, you have to just say, you're welcome to ask me anything that sounds unfamiliar to you. I know that other companies, if you say, I don't know what drywall is, what's the difference between drywall and sheetrock? It's like, this is why we don't hire. This is the sort of thing that they're not going to say. And then this is where we get into the discussion about that imposter syndrome that can push people out too. So I don't know if you wanted to.
No, absolutely. I was going to continue that, and just to say, you brought up an amazing point. It isn't just, you said it's not being said because it's politically incorrect to say it, but there was a USA Today article January 31st, 2021 around the hostile working environment within the trades for women. Like, yes, the trades have been identified as a pathway to upward mobility. However, 97% of men in the industry who were surveyed said that women are treated as outsiders. Women are reporting hostile working environment, sexual harassment. And so, yes, it's absolutely present. And this tool would empower novices, women in particular, to get the answers without having to face the harassment or the hazing that may be native to the space, but it's making women not choose it, you know? And so I think we have to, again, think about this in a different way. We only have 7 minutes left, but yes, definitely the imposter syndrome is something, I read an article and was advised to say, like, we don't need to tell women don't have the imposter syndrome. That's not how this works. It is the company providing resources and support so that women not feel that. And so like giving them this tool to say, hey, this is how you can navigate this on your own. This helps alleviate imposter syndrome.
Yes.
Or not alleviate, but at least impact it, you know, give a resource to impact it so that you feel more comfortable navigating a world that is unfamiliar to you. So just a few minutes left, but let's dig into that a little bit more.
Yes. Just to define it, I know it from entrepreneurship and tech circles, and I had it myself, you know, when you're in an early stage and people are like, you know, okay, great, you're the only one in this field and you're having this unique take on a situation because you have a different perspective on a different problem. Landing on Mars backwards or whatever is not my problem. Connecting people and getting people caught up and so that they can build the infrastructure of their own neighborhoods, technologically or otherwise, that's my problem to solve, right? Okay, yeah, that's great. Well, do you have an investor? Well, I'm not seeking investment. Okay, well, you're basically a nonprofit. And then in nonprofits, so are you a 501c3? No, I'm an S corp. Oh, so you're just in it for the money. And then you start questioning yourself. That was like the first like 2-3 years. Am I, what am I? Should I, you know, you start, all that self-doubt comes in. Am I an imposter? Am I really a businessman? Am I really solving something in the community? They don't really care for me as a business owner coming in. And that is even more so when you don't have, okay, well, I could just go back into the workforce. That's no shame in that. But if you're trying to get into a new position, you put yourself out there and you have questions. I made sure my corporate culture is you don't know what a bit is versus a byte. I'll happily just go on a whiteboard and explain for 5 minutes so you know what's going on, so you'll know for the rest of your life. Other places I know that's not their work for you. That shows weakness and they're cutthroat there. I want to see you weak. How are you supposed to solve a customer's problem? You don't even know what this is, you know. And especially if someone is mouthy with you, it just kills your drive to try to learn, because where do I go to learn? I'm here to learn. I'm here as a beginner. I was hired so I could be a starter. And that's something that is the imposter syndrome as it's kind of evolved. And I see that there was a chat. Oh, great. So I think as you just mentioned, well, it's trite to say it, but that's my motto: empowerment through knowledge, right? If I can, I'll give you a quick analogy, and I think it serves the point. I like to talk about my dad whenever I talk about my company at some point to get him out there, James Walker Sr. So he grew up in rural Waco. He was in the generation, like a lot of Black baby boomers, who integrated his public school. N-word constantly from 6-year-old, N-word, teachers. He does well. Oh gosh, you guys aren't trying. Even an N-word, you get this right. Like that level of demotivation, right? But he got good at math. And it came natural to him, but people think you're really smart if you're good at math. And it's really hard to call me a slur if you're getting lower grades than me consistently and you need my help. And that was his coping mechanism that got him into mastering in mathematics and teaching computer science and being an IT executive for most of his adult life, right? That knowledge differential can be, it's not the only thing, but it can be really empowering for you to say, wait a minute, yeah, I'm the new guy, new girl, I'm the greenhorn, I'm the rookie, whatever. But guess what? You see that light fixture and all that other stuff? I took care of it. Can you check my work?
Absolutely.
I was here 2 weeks. I started 2 weeks ago, and it's like, man, that took me 5 months before I could do. Okay, there's, you may not drive with me, you want to have lunch with me, but okay, got to respect the hustle that you were able to do something I couldn't do if I were at your stage in this career, and you keep doing it. And I don't have to hold your hand. And if you have questions, it's not because you're dumb, it's that you just need a clarity so that you can continue to produce results. I think that that's the lesson I picked up kind of from how my dad coped with that feeling, like severe, like more than most see today, to being able to, of course, get respect. And ultimately, of course, you also find who your real friends were all along, and you build those friendships. And then for people who were bullying you, they stop and they come to apologize to you eventually. So, that's something that I hope that in my work I can continue to find ways to do for other marginalized groups.
Absolutely.
In my own small way.
Absolutely. Well, James, thank you again for joining us today. We are at the end of our time on talking about how data science can be used to hasten workforce readiness within the trades. It is a new conversation that we're having here at She Built This City. We will be putting some plans into action this year through partnership with some systems to beta test with our program participants and graduates. If this sounds interesting to you, you would like to be a part of this process, please reach out to me, latoya.faustin@shebuiltthiscity.org. You can send an email to info@shebuiltthiscity.org so that we can continue this conversation, because with all that James mentioned today, all that we discussed, we're going to be putting into practice this year because we don't have time to waste. The time is now to make action. We're serious about this pledge. We're serious about making an impact in our community and closing the gap. Thank you again for being here today. Please join us for the next session next Wednesday. We will be talking about using equity, an equity lens through community engagement. James, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Latoya. Thank you for your contribution, Sandra.